This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Introduction. Both psychological and physical continuity theories play a crucial role in understanding personal identity. In the course of each individual's life, changes occur that make people consider that they are not the same as they used to be. The two theories have different approaches to the perception of human identity. Personally, I prefer the psychological continuity theory. In this paper, I will analyze both theories, offer examples, and explain my preference. Psychological continuity theory. Psychological continuity theory is related to the mental structure of the individual's development. Parfit defines psychological continuity as the holding of overlapping chains of strong connectedness. For X and Y to be the same person, there must be enough direct psychological connections over every day. These associations include desires, emotional attitudes, intentions, and beliefs. The view does not presuppose that these connections should be direct throughout life. In fact, even a short-term link is sufficient to maintain the continuity of an individual's persistence. Thus, the psychological continuity theory requires a mental connection between one's present and earlier states. However, as Beck remarks, this approach is not as simple as it may seem at first sight. Psychological continuity incorporates much more than a sequence of similar mental states. The person's resolution to act in the present moment appears as the outcome of the choice made in the past. Also, the present decision is associated with the memories of past choices as well as the events that caused specific commitments. In the analysis of psychological continuity theory, there are various views on the roles of the soul and body in a person's development. Berger argues that there is a dilemma concerning people's persistence in the virtue of their non-physical souls. According to Berger, the souls can either change over time similarly to physical bodies or remain unchanged, unlike physical bodies. In the first case, the soul theory faces the difficulty of the diachronic soul identity. In the second case, the soul theory fails to explain how souls are connected to particular bodies over time. Thus, according to Berger, the theory can provide an incomplete explanation of personal identity. This opinion is refuted by Francescotti, who argues that the psychological continuity theory explains the connections needed for the analysis of mental associations. The soul theory only sometimes succeeds in explaining why souls are related to particular bodies over time. Thus, it is argued that this theory explains personal identity only partially. According to Francescotti, there are two versions of memory links, endurantist and predurantist, each of them helping to understand psychological continuity. Endurantism claims that the person is wholly present at every point of his or her life. Predurantism states that only a temporal part and not the whole object is present at every stage of life. Even though desires are able to keep changing related to psychological continuity, individuals can still be the same person. Psychological disorder can be argued. An example of psychological theory is the life of a famous mathematician, John Nash. This scientist had schizophrenia, and at the end of his life, he remembered his achievements as a promising young student but did not have memories of himself as a mature man. However, he was the same person at each stage of his life. Thus, the benefits of the psychological theory are concerned with the fact that a person is viewed as an integrative individual at each point of his or her life, irrespective of circumstances. I prefer the psychological continuity theory because of its approach to humans as a whole and not as separate parts at different periods of life. Physical continuity theory. The second of the identity theories is the physical one. The physical continuity theory incorporates two versions, the animal theory and the brain theory. The first of the approaches presupposes that being the same individual means being the same human animal. Even if one loses a part of the body, he or she will still be regarded as the same human animal. However, if an organ is transplanted from one person to another, the individual who accepted a donor organ is no longer the same human animal. Furthermore, the one whose organ is in another person's body cannot be considered the same any longer. The brain theory is similar to the animal theory, but the former emphasizes the importance of having the same brain for the possibility of being the same person. Klaming and Haselager discuss the possible adverse outcomes of brain stimulation on psychological continuity. Thus, the authors argue that physical changes in a person's body may cause the disruption of his or her psychological state. This is the major disadvantage of physical theory. A benefit of this approach is that it is easier to explain persistence than through the psychological theory. Also, physical theory is considered to be stronger in the identification of a person's identity due to the appearance of oneself in a more convincing way. The physical theory is associated with Aristotle's conception of spatiotemporal continua and continuous motion. According to Rowe, such continuity involves the continuity of psychological capacities generated and sustained in a physically continuous brain. Therefore, both theories are interconnected in what concerns the impact on the human body. An example of the physical theory based on true events is the story of two neighbors donating their organs to David Conrad. The man needed a liver transplant, and two of his friendly neighbors volunteered to help. According to physical continuity theory, these people are not the same human animals. Each of the three individuals is now considered to have less physical integrity and more connection to the other two people. Conclusion: both psychological and physical continuity theories are sufficient and necessary for personal identity. In my opinion, the psychological approach makes more sense because it views the person as the same being even after some considerable changes in the organism, such as memory loss or organ transplant. Physical theory, however, refuses to accept individuals as the same after their organisms undergo some changes. The advantage of physical theory is that it allows for the easy explanation of persistence. The benefit of the psychological theory is that it sees each person as an integrative organism. The disadvantage of both theories is that it is rather complicated to follow all of their aspects separately. However, taking into consideration all the mentioned aspects, the psychological continuity theory seems more relevant and able to explain personal identity better than the physical approach. If you want to find more works like this essay on psychological versus physical continuity theory, head over to ivpanda.com. It has a collection of free samples with thousands of submissions covering virtually all academic subjects. No registration required to access it.